Hello everybody, my name is Alessandro Gambella and I'm a third year pathology resident in Turin in Italy. Today I'm very pleased to introduce you to a new case for the Pathologists Online series. I hope you enjoy it. Okay, in this case the diagnosis will come up a little bit surprisingly and I will explain to you later why it is a double negative diagnosis. Okay, the case regards a male patient, age 77, with an oncological anamnesis of lung adenocarcinoma. Unfortunately, the original report wasn't available and therefore we don't know the stage of diagnosis, but during a follow-up CT scan, a nodular area was identified in the gallbladder just beside the liver. The first hypothesis was of a carcinoma of the gallbladder, and so we underwent surgical treatment and removed the gallbladder together with part of the liver and the lymph nodes of the hepatic hilum as well for staging purposes. As you can see, the patient was really not a healthy one, with many comorbidities and risk factors, particularly regarding respiratory and metabolites functions. These are the MATIC values with all the blood cell count, and they all look typical. Okay, here we start with the sample slide, but first I have to tell you something about the gross appearance of the specimens, and the gallbladder was full of gallstones, but it looks more inflammatory and fibrotic rather than neoplastic, and no nodular lesion was found at all. Anyway, here we could see the gallbladder on the right part of the slide and the liver on the left. This is a low power view, but you could already manage to see that something is missing. I mean, you barely recognize the gallbladder, and here in the inset there is no neoplastic architecture, no neoplastic cells of any lines, and no gallbladder mucosa at all. We performed a broad panel of immunohistochemical staining to exclude any neoplastic proliferation, but they were all negative and nothing shows up. All we have were these polymorphic inflammatory infiltrates that look like an ulcerative lesion of the gallbladder, probably due to the gallstones. Once we exclude the gallbladder neoplasm, we decide to concentrate on the liver parenchyma as well, thinking about hepatocellular carcinoma or other liver proliferative disorders that could have led to the nodular CT appearance. But here you can see again how no neoplastic proliferation was evident, just some macrovesicular statosis and a mild portal inflammatory infiltrate. So here it comes the first negative of the title, because no neoplastic proliferation was found, and therefore we performed the diagnosis of an ulcerative lesion of the gallbladder wall. Now you should think that the case is finished, but what I'm showing you right now is one of the lymph nodes we received together with the gallbladder and the liver. The lymph nodes were 6 and they all look like this. This is not a healthy lymph node, this is not a regular one. The dimension and the architecture are peculiar about this lymph node. The hilum is barely recognizable. There is a diffuse and homogeneous whitish parenchyma grossly organized in prominent nodules. In the inset here, you could value even better the prominent nodules, and these are all clues that make you suspect a lymphoproliferative disorder. Now, this is the hematoxylin adenosine stain, but first there is an advice I received and I would like to share with you. It regards lymph node sampling, and it is that when you have to do the grossing and the sampling of a lymph node, do not take one of the biggest sections. The bigger the sample, the more frequent the trouble with all the pre-analytic phases, such as staining, but also immunohistochemical staining. If you suspect a lymphoproliferative disease, as in this case we do, always select a small section. It will be much easier to handle, but still representative. If you're approaching lymphoproliferative diseases for the first time, I recommend you to read the last 10, maybe 15 pages of the chapter regarding the lymphoreticular system in the Fletcher book Diagnostic Histopathology of Tumors. This chapter is, all the chapter is very interesting, but the last part is titled Practical Approach to the Lymphoproliferative Diseases, and it gives you a schematic but a complete approach to the lymph node and the lymphoproliferative disorders, particularly in terms of architecture and the pattern. Okay, about our lymph node here, we have to consider mainly 3 characteristics that are the hilum, the sinuses, and the capsule. In this case, I think that the capsule is okay because it is thin, and all elements are located behind it. But the sinuses and the hilum have an obscured appearance, and they are obscured because of this proliferation of lymphoid elements. In the left part of the lymph nodes, here with the blue border, the proliferation has a diffuse architecture, while in the right part, here with the green border, more a nodular one. But regardless the pattern, the elements looks like all the same. Here you can see them even better, and they look like small cells with scant cytoplasm around to intended nuclei. And here we can see even better the nodular appearance and a global appearance of the single elements, maybe more of a centrocyte-like or monocytoid elements. Okay, so what is your diagnosis? Well, I think that without a complete immunohistochemical panel, it's very difficult to define the nature of this lymphoid proliferation, but we could manage to make some hypotheses. And everybody should agree that this could be a lymphoma made of small elements, and there are no big bad elements that make you think about a transformation or a diffuse large B-cell lymphoma. And the elements are organized both in a diffuse and nodular pattern, and therefore I think that probably is a low-grade mature B-cell lymphoma. Our hypothesis at this moment could be of a follicular lymphoma, a mantle cell lymphoma, or even a chronic lymphocytic leukemia or a nodal marginal zone lymphoma. But let's move on. Here we go with the immunohistochemical panel. These are the first stainings, and they show a positivity of the neoplastic elements for CD20, while the CD3 is negative, and we have got a low, very low proliferative index. Well, all these three stainings confirm suspect of a low-grade mature B-cell nature. Okay, we got to the second part of the immunohistochemical panel, and this slide is very helpful because it allows us to exclude some of the hypotheses we made earlier. We have the CD23, CD5, and cyclin D1, and they all negative. Here in the inset, in the higher power view, you could see even better. And now we can exclude the mantle cell lymphoma, which is CD5 and cyclin D1 positive, and the chronic lymphocytic leukemia, which is CD5 and CD23 positive. Here we got the third part. BCL2 is strongly and diffusely positive, while here we got also two germinal center markers, which BCL6 and CD10, and you may think that they are positive because there are these two small nodules with strong intensity, but I mean, these are not neoplastic elements. These are just the only two small germinal centers in the whole lymph node, while the higher power view I show you right now shows you even better how the lymphoid elements are negative and strongly positive for BCL2. Okay, finally the staining for the light chain, kappa and lambda, and they are negative as well. And so, considering that no lymphoproliferative disorders were clinically suspected, and the almost all negative immunohistochemical profile, we decided to perform the clonality analysis. So here you could see the graph resulting from the PCR analysis for the heavy chain gene loci and the light chain gene loci. And the peaks I show you are lonely, as you could see, and therefore representing the monoclonality of the sample and confirming the neoplastic nature of the proliferation. To summarize a little bit our findings, on a morphology base only, we have the obscuration of the typical lymph node structure, such as the sinuses and the hilum. There is this nodular pattern, nodular architecture, but without, or at least with only two germinal centers. And the immunohistochemical profile is almost negative for everything, but consistent with B-cell lymphoma. And this is quite informative that is negative because, as we have seen, it excludes some entities. And finally, the molecular analysis confirmation. So, your guess? Well, based on these elements, we performed a diagnosis of a nodal marginal zone lymphoma. And here it comes the second negative of the title, because this is the WHO definition of nodal marginal zone lymphoma, and it's some sort of a negative definition because in the first part there is quite a generic description of the morphology, but then in just the last sentence it tells you that you have to exclude extranodal and spleen localization to perform a diagnosis of a nodal marginal zone lymphoma. So maybe more than a negative diagnosis, more appropriately, it's an exclusion diagnosis because you have to integrate the clinical and the pathological data. and is required to exclude, as we said, the extranodal localization of marginal zone lymphoma. And of course, you also have to exclude all the other lymphoid neoplasm we argued earlier with a broad immunohistochemical panel, because there is no established positive marker existing for this lymphoma, except for MNDA. MNDA is the myeloid cell nuclear differentiation antigen and is expressed in 75% of cases, more or less, and is usually negative in follicular lymphoma. So it is useful to exclude follicular lymphoma rather than confirm nodal marginal zone lymphoma. Nodal marginal zone lymphoma is a rare lymphoma accounting for maybe 1.5–2% of lymphoid neoplasm. This is a pathology of the adult with a median age of 60 and no gender predilection. The 5-year overall survival rate is about 60–70%, and there are some characteristics associated with a poor prognosis, and there are advanced age, B symptoms, and advanced disease stages, of course. There are 3 patterns of nodal marginal zone lymphoma: the diffuse pattern, which is the most frequent, the interfollicular, and the nodular one. And the neoplastic cell could look like properly one of the marginal zone, such as the centrocyte-like and the monocytoid aspect, or with plasma cell feature in some cases, or even present scattered transform B cell. But remember that to diagnose a transformation, you require sheets of large cells and not just single elements, and similar to the criteria used in other lymphoma types. Bone marrow involvement is usually interstitial or nodular, with an intertrabecular or paratrabecular distribution, and an intrasinusoidal infiltration could also be seen, but is less common. And while regarding differential diagnosis, well, we said it's an exclusion diagnosis, so we have to exclude all the other low-grade B-mature lymphoma before performing the diagnosis. We could say that normal marginal zone lymphoma is a tricky lesion, In fact, indeed, if you perform the research in PubMed, you come up with all these titles, and they are full of doubt, pitfall, dilemma, what do we know, and so on, implying that this lymphoma is far from being truly defined. Among these papers and reviews, I recommend this one. Is a very elegant work describing the pattern and the morphology of nodal marginal zone lymphoma thoroughly, and I think it is particularly indicated if you're approaching this pathology. Just a moment to thank all the people that contribute to this presentation, starting with Claudia Manini and Andrea De Marchi, and all the pathology lab staff of the Giovanni Bosco Hospital, where I spent 2 wonderful months and where we performed the diagnosis of this case. Then Paola Francia, that she performed the molecular analysis and told me everything about the molecular profile of nodal marginal zone lymphoma, and Professor Cassoni, that she is my mentor and always support me in every situation. And of course, thanks to Gonzalo for this great opportunity. I hope this presentation was helpful for you, and if you have any questions or suggestions, please feel free to contact me. Thank you again.